Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 344 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation, PerformBetter.com. I'm your host, Anthony Durand, and the show notes are located at my site, ContinueFit.com, or you can go to StrengthCoachPodcast.com. On the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about the importance of exercise names. He gets a little crazy with that. His thoughts on rapid response plyos, an example of using the one thing idea when coaching. So the one thing is the one thing that by doing it makes everything else easier. And lastly, what he meant by a Twitter response to that he said, we need to remember that screens are just screens. All right, Naamly is the member experience platform for modern training gyms. It puts all of your communication with your members in one place, allowing you to keep track of that communication. So important for retention. Go to Naamly.com to schedule your demo. You'll get a feel for what you can do with this incredible tool. Use the referral code Strength Coach to get started on a free 30-day trial. All right, for the Naamly Hit the Gym with a Strength Coach segment, I have on Brett Jones. Brett is the Strong First Director of Education. He's also on the board at FMS. He's also the author of a new book called Iron Cardio. So we're going to get all into his story about his road back from cancer that happened, that he went through in 2020. What a great time to have cancer. But we're going to ask him about coaching somebody through this time, speaking to someone who's going through cancer treatment, the training process for his road back from body weight, and how strength aerobics helped him put the kettlebell back in his hands. And he's going to talk a little bit about what strength aerobics is and how that evolved into Iron Cardio, his book. We're going to talk about intuitive training and avoiding the traps of intuitive training, identifying intuitive clients versus structured clients, talk a little bit about waviness and weight ladders, and so much more. For the KISS Marketing Business Secrets for Gym Owners with Vince Gabriele, Vince is going to go over the ultimate video script for people who suck at video. So he's got a little system that you can remember, and he even throws one of his buddies under the bus about the video script that he used. All right. KISS Marketing is a digital marketing agency that helps fitness business owners make the big bucks from their marketing without feeling stupid, stressed, or wasting valuable time figuring it out on their own. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson, Vince Gabriele's secret marketing weapon. For the Getting Started with VBT or Velocity-Based Training segment, brought to you by Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. The cameras effortlessly quantify weight room performance without detracting from it. This week, Nick is going to speak about how to avoid paralysis by analysis with weight room technology. All right, guys, don't forget the huge summer sale. It's just about over. It's going on right now, 40% off a ton of items, including TRX suspension trainers, ultimate sandbags, all kinds of cleaning supplies, roll-go rollers, plyo boxes, and so much more. It ends September 30th, but they always extend it. Don't tell them I told you that. They usually extend it a couple of days. So make sure you go to PerformBetter.com to check that out. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. You can try the new StrengthCoach.com out 7 days for free, totally new format, user-friendly, unless you're posting on the back end like Coach Boyle and I. Not as user-friendly, but whatever. We'll get to that another time. But the same great forum as always. It's where the top coaches in the industry come to connect and learn. Go to StrengthCoach.com, 7 days for free. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Anthony. How are you?
All right, hanging in there. I always find it funny, like you're the easiest person to prepare for. And I'll probably do a thread on Twitter, which I hate threads, but they can be useful about interviewing people. And I always tell people when they ask me, I say, try not to prepare too much, because then if you over prepare, you tend to kind of focus on what you prepared instead of having a conversation. And with you, it's super easy. I just go on Twitter, Strength Coach, see a couple of threads, and then I just ask one question. You ramble on, and there we are. But it's so funny. I wasn't even prepared, and we just decided this morning that we were going to do this. But I did have a question, Coach, about plyos, and because I made a mistake in one of my videos recently, and I called it a hop. I apologize. I called it a hop. It was really a bound, and it was really the lateral bound. Okay. And I usually call them skaters to my clients because it's just easier for them to visualize it. And I know that's just saying it to my client, but I want to make sure we're on the same page. And then I have a question about plyos. Hop 1 foot to the same foot. Jump 2 feet, landing on 2 feet. A bound, starting on 1 foot, landing on the other. Right? Am I right?
You're right.
All right, cool.
Right.
I know I'll mess it up at some point, but especially when the camera's on and then you just forget. I'm so used to just saying jump. I think everybody is.
I just did a thing for Miguel Sosa in Portugal. So like Zoom, but obviously I didn't go to Portugal, but and I was saying we were talking about plyos, and I said that the reality is when you say single leg hop is redundant.
Yes.
Because if it's single leg, it's a hop. You know what I mean? It's like, double leg jump. No, it's redundant. But the reason, and I know I've told this story on the podcast before, but the reason that I'm so particular about this is that it's really important when you're talking or writing programs and people aren't seeing what you're doing, that they know exactly what you're doing. And we used to call hurdle jumps hurdle hops, hurdle hops with two legs over the hurdle hops. And the reality is they are hurdle jumps. And I had a guy one time that I had sent a program to, and because you know how literal some people can be in this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like 30-inch hurdle hops. You got some unreal athletes. And I kind of scratched my head. I'm like, what is he talking about? Like 30-inch hurdle hops, not particularly impressive. I mean, they're, most of our guys can do it. Most of, our high school kids can do a 30-inch hurdle hop. Some of them anyway. And then I'm thinking, hurdle hop. He's got his people on one leg in front of those hurdles, and that's a little intimidating. And that was one of the real big illustrations for me that, hey, this is really important. The other one that was really, and it drives me absolutely shithouse, and I don't swear on the podcast very often, but in both of the big ACL, the PEP program and the Santa Monica program, they call everything by the wrong name. They use the wrong name for lunges. They use the wrong name for hops. They use the wrong name for bounds. And I'm looking and thinking, this is supposed to be state-of-the-art ACL injury prevention information, and the terminology isn't even right, which bugs the absolute crap out of me. So I've become a real stickler for terminology. And I also think that if you then understand the terminology, everything should be pretty self-explanatory. If you say to somebody, hurdle hop, 12-inch hurdles, 5 right, 5 left, you should look and think, okay, I'm hopping over the hurdles on one leg, and I'm doing 5 with my right leg and 5 with my left leg, and I'm using a 12-inch hurdle. Really self-explanatory. I should be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Say hurdle jumps, 24-inch hurdles, 5 times, 3 sets of 5. I know I'm going over a 24-inch hurdle, taking off on 2 legs, landing on 2 legs. So I think we need to be really good and really better with our language so that we're not doing freaking, like we talked about, I can't come up with a good name for Spanish squats, but so we're not doing Bulgarian lunges and Romanian deadlifts and Copenhagen adductors and all these other things where people think, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, and I don't think, if you ever read anything on memory, though the guys who focus on, short-term memory contests or whatever, there's all these associations. So unless they're sitting there going, okay, my wife is Danish and she hates side planks, so she would really hate this, so I'll remember that it's called the Copenhagen plank. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's the same thing with rear foot elevated split squat. I'm totally on the same page here because if I tell somebody to do a rear foot elevated split squat, they can, and I'm talking about the client. I'm not talking about coach to coach because obviously that's important too, but the client. Somebody can figure out a rear foot elevated split squat. And it's the same thing. I've never called it the Pavlov press. I call it a belly press because I always had people start at their belly and they're pressing out. And I think they remember that more. They don't know what Pavlov means.
Exactly.
So,
no, I agree. I think that, a lot of that stuff, it becomes maybe the vernacular even of your own gym. It drives me crazy because the people in our gym use the abbreviations. I'm like, don't use the abbreviations. Don't say RFE. Don't say SLDL. Don't spell out, literally say to the person what you want them to do. The other one that drives me crazy is people say, we're going to do stationary lunges. You can't do a stationary lunge. You can either be stationary or lunge. You can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like lunging constitutes lunging, like you're moving towards something. It's like, I'm going to be stationary but move towards you. It's almost like, and it becomes a little George Carlin-esque sometimes.
yeah.
But I do believe that stuff is really important, and I do believe that the more we can kind of yap at people about standardizing the terminology and using the correct terminology, the better it's going to be. But I think you probably read it on Twitter. I find myself doing it. We just say clean. We do not say hang clean above the knees. And really hang power clean above the knees is technically what we do, but our programs will all say clean. And so even for us, sometimes we'll find ourselves being a victim of exactly what we're accusing everybody else of, or being a practitioner, I guess.
Well, in your defense, though, there's only one clean that you do. So there's no other, like, wait, which clean do you mean, Mike? No, you've only been taught one here. There's only one clean we teach, and the coaches, even on either a coach level or a client level, you only have one clean. So it's not the end of the world. I'm not trying to say, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think anybody would know the difference because they don't do power cleans, right? So.
Exactly.
Coach, what about rapid response drills? I feel like I don't see those in your program. What are your thoughts on them? And if you would do them, can you just comment on bilateral versus unilateral?
Yeah, we don't really do them. That's a kind of an Exos thing. And I know for whatever reason, very early on, Mark Verstegen loved those kind of rapid response. I could never, I guess in my mind, figure out exactly what the real purpose of it was going to be or where it was going to apply, because I just felt like that never happens. You're never going to get, and I guess it's a nervous system firing thing, trying to get somebody to be able to be sort of on off kind of thing. But we've just never used them.
Yeah, I think
better answer than that.
Well, for me, I think working with an older population, for me, I just like them because I think it's lower force because you're not really focused on any kind of height or distance, but you're still getting some speed in there as much as they can. Like you said, a little bit more neurological firing right there. But I feel like there is lower force because of from that perspective. So for me, I feel like I can throw those in with my demographic through my lens.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think we do it more in the context of ladder drills. We might do some rapid response, fast foot kind of stuff, but we just wouldn't do the sort of in-place foot fire kind of version.
Yeah. Okay. Coach, you posted a picture of the one thing, and you said when teaching in the weight room, think about one thing. The one thing, by doing it, makes everything else easier. So you said one correction at a time. Can you just give some people an example of maybe a time when you use this?
Yes, we use it. We use it all the time in the weight room because what I'm trying to get our coaches to understand is that, let's just say, and hang clean is a really big offender. You may be watching somebody doing a hang clean, and you might look and think, oh my God, they're doing this 5 things they're doing really badly. But what I want them to focus on in their mind, their coach's mind, and with their coach's eye, is what's the one thing that I can tell this person that by doing it will make everything better. And it might be keep your arms longer. It might be keep the bar closer to your body. It might be try to sit back. It might be try to do it faster. But I want you to give them one coaching point going into the next set, because I think if you don't, they don't get anything out of it at all. If you say to somebody, well, I need you to, I need you to get your elbows up, and I need you to be faster. I need you to keep your arms long. I need you to unhook your wrists. I need you to sit back more. They get back up to the bar and they think, I have no idea what he said. Okay, I'm just going to do exactly what I did the set before. Whereas if you look and think I look at some people all the time, think all I want you to do is think about jump and sit, jump and sit, jump and sit. Just think jump up, sit down. And that's actually really 2 things, but it's not, in terms of it's that idea of trying to really simplify teaching and make your teaching impactful and develop your ability to look and think, what's the one thing? Okay, 5 errors. What's the one thing that by doing it is going to make everything else better? And it, like I said, that might be just keep the bar closer to your body. It might be just get your elbows up. But it's that ability to say, okay, I'm going to fix this. And then next set, I'll give them one more thing. But I won't give them 2 things.
Mike, do you find that you're often out of those, let's stay with the clean here, that there is one thing that usually helps fix other things?
Yes, I think there always is. I think because what you're doing really is you're pulling out the primary offender. That's all you're doing. You're looking and saying, okay, this is the biggest mistake that you're making that I want to correct right now.
Is there one that people normally common?
I would say no, there really isn't. And that's why I think makes the clean so difficult and I think maybe so controversial for people in terms of some people, say, oh, don't bother. It takes too long. It's too hard to teach, blah, 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 blah. Because you really do need to develop your eye to be able to look and think, okay, what is this person? What's the mistake that needs to be corrected right now? And I would not say there was one. No, I would say if you said, are there 4 or 5? I'd say, yeah, there's 4 or 5, but there's not one. But I think the key is to be able to look and think it's exactly what it says in the book. The one thing that by doing it would make everything else easier, or in this case, say of the clean, would make it better. And it's the same if you're looking at goblet squat and you think, oh, I really don't like that goblet squat. What am I going to tell them? That, am I going to tell them to get their weight on their heels? Am I going to tell them to drive their knees out? What's the thing I'm going to tell them?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that is one. It's not like a squat where you feel like, okay, this usually fixes everything. With the clean, I've found myself walking around the movement, making sure the bar's going. So it does take some time, and it's probably why people, don't want to include it in the program.
I think so. I think and people get really mad whenever because that's obviously it's a big Twitter argument anyway. And when you say that the reason some people don't like to do it or to include it is because they can't teach it, that really offends the people who can't teach it.
Yeah. Coach, there was a Sportsmith, I think that's the Pacey, I forget his first name, Pacey podcast guy. He had talked about strength and conditioning becoming increasingly popular for golfers, but poor info plagues the golf industry, which, obviously an indictment at TPI. I even showed a video of TPI. But saying that there's basically a lot of one of the biggest culprits is the movement screen for golfers. And there's a specificity trap. Just because it looks similar doesn't mean it's useful. And he goes over, gives a couple pretty good examples and his argument. And you had said, we need to remember screens are screens. That's it. So I wanted you to clarify whether you were talking to Pacey and Jack Wells, who really that was his article, I guess, about like, hey, I understand that you feel like there's some misinformation coming out, but we're not going to rely completely on the screens. But you're also saying to people, remember, don't put all your stock into a screen. I felt like you were in the middle there, but I wanted you to clarify. What do you mean we need to remember screens are screens and that's it?
Well, I think what happens, and the title of the article was Movement Screens in Golf. Are they actually linked to the swing? And the difference is, my issue with this, and that's why I said a screen is a screen, is that no one ever said they were. And this is my whole problem. I get very aggravated with this sort of anti-movement screen people because they start saying, well, the movement screen doesn't predict injury. And I'm like, have you been to a movement screen class? Have you listened to Gray or Lee talk about movement screen? No time do they tell you. They have said, yes, we did do a study where movement screen scores seemed to be predictive. But they'll be the first ones to tell you that the screen is literally what it is. It is a screen. And you've probably seen this illustration, but I have a garden screen that I always show that you use to get the rocks out of dirt. So when you're trying to screen your loom, you throw the dirt on a garden screen, and the dirt goes through the screen, and the rocks get stuck on top of the screen. And I always tell people, that's what this is. That's what a screen is. The screen is just going to pop really big stuff for you where you go, oh, shit, I didn't think I'd find that. And I've given the analogy a million times in a million talks, but we had a basketball player who couldn't do the inline lunge. And we were evaluating him for a lower he had a lower abdominal problem that had kept him out for about half a season. And couldn't, and based on the other screen stuff, he did everything else really well, except he couldn't lunge. And I mean, lunging, he was really awkward. And I was kind of like, what's the deal? And he was like, oh, I got turf toe. And this was on his back leg. He said, I have turf toe on my left foot. And I just can't bend my foot that way that you need me to bend my foot. And I was like, oh. And then I started, and I remembered him walking really duck-footed, really externally rotated. And I said, did you always walk the way that you walk now? And he's like, no, only since my toe. He said, I can't roll over my big toe, so I walk like on the outsides of my feet. And then I started thinking about, abdominal muscle tears and, him sort of living in external rotation. And all of this was the result of a big toe injury that no one, and again, some people would say, oh, come on, that's a crazy example. But it wasn't. It was a very real life example of a guy who had injured his big toe, and that literally turned into a torn abdominal muscle that kept him out for a significant portion of an NBA season. The point being, a screen picked that up. So it was the rock. It was the big rock that didn't get through the screen. Was like, wait a second, his big toe on his left foot doesn't move? And at that time, I remember Omi Awasaki was our PT. This was back in the old Athletes Performance Days, so it was 2004 or 5, somewhere around there. And Omi was like, God, it's like his toe is fused. I remember he was looking, it's like his toe doesn't move at all. Like not like it's not bending, as far as it should. He said it's like it's turned to stone. But that's my point with the screen. When you do the screen, and that's why sometimes I go crazy, and I think Brett and some guys are way too meticulous about the screen, and it's way too detail oriented. What I want to look and see is, can this guy squat? Can this guy do a lunge? What's this guy's linear stability look like? What does his shoulder mobility look like? Just gross things where I might pick up something really big that's going to help me to move forward. So, and then people are saying, it doesn't predict injury, it doesn't relate to the golf swing. Like I don't think anybody said that it did.
That's not true, Mike. Actually, it is. They have correlated the overhead squat test screen. And this is the golf screen, not the, I know overhead squat is in functional movement as well, functional movement screen. But in the TPI screen, they do talk about, they do talk about predicting some of the swing faults. And they're talking about this being, correlation does not equal causation. And so they do say that some studies have shown overhead squat has no impact on the swing, or things like a single leg balance test. and that a static unilateral task lasting 25 seconds is not a valid predictor of dynamic bilateral task lasting less than a second. So TPI has correlated some of these things to, and they're just arguing in this that there are some reliability factors as well. But I would still say it does give you a picture into what that body is doing.
Yes, and I think it has. But I guess my point is just that it's not. I think people don't look at the big picture, and because the people that are saying these things, they're usually, in my mind, they're either, if it's in a golf situation, they're anti-TPI people, or if it's the FMS situation, they're anti-FMS people, and they're trying to make a point that the screen is bad. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, you're literally missing the point of the screen if you're saying that the screen is bad. And again, they've tried to create some predictive data algorithm, that, hey, this seems to relate to this. But the reality is, screening is still a good thing, and taking somebody through some movements to see if they have limitations is still a good thing. I have trouble looking at that and thinking, like how can that be bad? I just don't, I look at it and think, how can this be bad? And I think sometimes it's just people looking for a fight, looking for a disagreement, looking to maybe position themselves as an expert in a particular area, or maybe somebody that has a competing evaluative method that they may want to be touting. I just think there's always some underlying, stuff to that.
Yeah, true. Good stuff. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of venom out there for whatever.
Well, again, I have no, I don't know this, Jack Wells, I think was his name. I don't know him at all, and I don't know what his I don't know if he has an agenda or what his agenda might be. I just know I get aggravated sometimes because you literally, the screen, it's like, it's the starting place, right? It's kind of like, you go through security. What do? They screen you, right? When you go through security. But then if you get flagged, then what do? They look into you more, right? They take and they wander around, and then they look through your bag. They don't look and think, screen, if this pops, you're a terrorist, and we slap the cuffs on you and drag you out of the airport. It's a screen, right? True. And a primary, say a positive finding on a primary screen just means, hey, look a little deeper at this area. And that's what I would always say to people. I would write, when I'm doing FMS stuff, I would just write check ankles, check hips. So things that I wanted to look at later and say, hey, are there some bigger differentiators that I need to worry about?
Absolutely. Good stuff. All right, Coach. Well, thanks for doing this as always, and we'll speak to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Ian.
Hey guys, it's Vince Gabriele. I'm kind of whispering because I'm out on the porch at the house late working, and Anthony just texted me and said I'm late for my segment and to get it to me as soon as possible. And he was very rude with his text. So I'm here late recording, but I have something good for you guys today. So some of the team members that I have, I run 2 companies. I have Gabriele Fitness. So I run 4 companies, but I have 2 brick and mortar based businesses. One's a gym, a personal training gym for adults, and the other one's a sports performance business. And lots of times the people that work at both end up doing videos to promote different programs and different things we do. And man, it's always a horrific day in their lives when we ask them to do a video, because they get in front of the camera and they're like, and they got the ums and they don't know what to say. And, it takes them 4 hours to film, a 1-minute video. And we're like, dude, we just want you to talk about this little program here. So I got so sick and tired of wasting so much time with people that just suck at video. So instead of saying, well, you can't do video anymore, what I did was I created a really simple script for them to follow. Now, I didn't create it. I learned it. But basically, essentially, what you do is it probably would be good to handwrite this out like before you do it, but not so much that you got to read it. And the way what it's called is it's the who, what, why, and the how. Who, what, why, how. And so you start the video by saying who you are, and simple as that. I'm Vince Gabriele. There you go. You're done, buddy. You're done with that part. You got it. You're killing it. Great job. Keep going. All right. Next thing. What you got? Well, why are you making the video? What are you trying to promote? Are you trying to promote a 6-week challenge? Are you trying to promote a summer camp? Whatever you're trying to promote. The why is why they need it, right? Why they need it. And this one the people have the most difficulty with. Right. So you would be obviously talking to a specific group of people, and you'd be talking to, let's say you're talking to parents of kids of why they should join your sports performance program. And basically you can get into the why, like, they want to, perform better at their sports. They want to, have more confidence. All these things help get them faster. All these things are the why they should do it. And then the final piece is how to get it. And this is really where people just stop videos. They're like, all right, cool. And they like mic drop. And they're like, no, dude, you got to tell them what to do. People need to be told what to do. And it's really like, you have to be very, very clear with this. And so the how is, if it's a specific video on a landing page, you're like, click the red button right below this video, and that'll take you to a lead form and put your name and email, like just basically really be clear on what exactly you want them to do, or how they can sign up for the thing that you're promoting, or how they can buy the thing that they're promoting. But and I will tell you that people in my domain that really suck at video, like you should see, and he's not going to like that I use his name, but my director of my grip program, Mike Mullen, I love the kid. He's amazing. But he's terrible on video, and he recorded all these videos, and it was taking him forever. And so we got the who, what, why script, and he put out a really good video. It was really solid, but this is the exact script he followed. If you want to see Mike's video, he's going to kill me for telling you about this. But if you want to see Mike's video, if you can just go to gritathletes.com and you can see the video. And do me a favor, when you get there, don't opt in, because it just sends, he's just going to email you back and say, our program is full because we're totally sold out right now. But just don't send Mike down a wild goose chase if you're just, trying to opt in and funnel hack us. So just check out the video, though. It's gritathletes.com. But that's a great, great thing for you to do, is to make it simple for people to do video. So if you need more help with stuff like this, and you want to amp up the marketing of your business and your gym and take things to the next level, just head on over to club.vincegabriele.com and check out a free trial where you can get all kinds of tips and tools and things like this for $1. So club.vincegabriele.com. I'll see you in the inside. Peace.
Hey everyone, welcome to Getting Started with VBT, or Velocity-Based Training, brought to you by Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. I am Nico Ouellette, and I'm the head of marketing and education for Perch. And in this series on the Strength Coach podcast, we cover all things related to velocity-based training. We've talked a lot about the theory of VBT, a lot about application and why and when to use it, but I wanted to address something this week about the very notion of not using it, and ultimately how to avoid paralysis by analysis when it comes to all weight room technology. Weight room technology and the data that is derived from it can be daunting to set up and sift through. Coaching time is valuable and limited, so it's best to limit the amount of energy and time spent on setting up your weight room tech and to use it as a tool to enhance your training instead of detracting from it. Here are some considerations and ideas for avoiding paralysis by analysis with weight room technology. Number one is equipment setup. You have to set up and take down a lot of weight room equipment on a daily basis. And so keeping that setup and tear down of the equipment minimal will only help you streamline your program when it comes to any weight room tech and velocity-based training specifically. Some traditional methods of applying VBT, like linear position transducers or tether-based systems, and even accelerometers are a little bit more involved than they ought to be. Using devices that need only be installed once can help expedite setup and takedown, obviously by eliminating it, and camera systems fit this bill really nicely. With Perch specifically, the camera is on a motor and it can actually adjust positions as you adjust exercises, so you'll really only need to turn it on and not waste your time setting anything up. Less setup time in general means more time for coaches to focus on coaching and less for the actual equipment that enables the session, and this can alleviate some of the daunting factors of weight room tech. Number 2 is exporting training data. Collecting data is great, but unless you're managing it, it's hard to make great use of it and render it useful. With VBT, if you're just monitoring the velocities during a session and trying to record the ones you see or relying on athletes to record it, we might be missing some critical information. Cloud-based systems are ideal for managing data. Cloud-based means that all of your data generated in a session will end up stored by exercise and by athlete, so you don't have to worry about data cleanliness or accuracy. Coaches can then view or export the data to monitor trends longitudinally. This is not only great to have for current training sessions, but also for looking back to previous sessions to see improvement. Cloud-based is a huge consideration for weight room technology in this day and age. Number 3 is evaluating the training data. Coaches know that making sense of many athletes' training data after a session can take a long time. In order to streamline this, the process must be integrated. Choosing weight room tech that has the capability to take the training data from sessions, store it, and make it easy to understand and manipulate is pivotal. This makes evaluating and presenting the relevant data much easier than ever before, and by making data collection and analysis incredibly easy, weight room tech can help you avoid paralysis by analysis. To speak directly to VBT, often the sheer quantity of data can seem daunting. VBT is somewhat new, so understanding velocity zones and some basic principles of programming with VBT can be helpful to start, but then simply collecting data, combining it with subjective data points, i.e., how are you feeling today, will help illustrate how helpful VBT can be. Just getting started can clarify a ton of mystery around the data, and again, eliminate that paralysis by analysis. Number 4 is extra help. Weight room technology should work for coaches and not the other way around. Technology needs to be seamlessly integrated to be utilized most effectively. It needs to provide relevant data, not excess noise, and that needs to make the data easy to manipulate and visualize. We always recommend evaluating different technologies to find the best solution for you and your specific use case. And we're always happy to help if you have any questions about anything related to velocity-based training or Perch specifically. Weight room technology is here and it isn't going anywhere, so we want to help everyone find a solution that works for their unique circumstances. Don't get caught up in analysis by paralysis. Try to get started, try to collect data, and ultimately help your athletes optimize their performance in the weight room and on the field of play. And that is it for today. Thanks for listening. And if you have any more questions about VBT or want more information and special deals, head to perch.fit/strength coach. That is perch.fit/strength coach. Thanks.
All right, now it's time for the Naamly Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, brought to you by Naamly, the ultimate retention tool designed specifically for fitness coaches and gyms to help your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. You can schedule a demo to get a feel for what you can do with this incredible tool. Use the referral code Strength Coach. Get started on your free 30-day trial. All right. Today, I have on Brett Jones. And Brett, if you listen to this podcast, you know who he is. But he is the Strong First Director of Education. He is also a certified athletic trainer and strength and conditioning specialist based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's also on the advisory board for Functional Movement Systems. So that, he's been doing that since 2006. He's created multiple DVDs and manuals with Gray Cook, including the widely praised Secrets of series. So Secrets of series are amazing. They're still relevant. They're one of the Secrets of the Shoulder, and then the Get Up and everything. It's so amazing. If you've never seen those, look those up. Check those out. Brett has come up with a new book. It's called Iron Cardio. And I just do want to say my experience with Brett over the years. He's been a huge help for me We're approaching 15 years on this podcast. So I've been thinking about all the people that kind of have helped me get through this over the 15 years. And Brett has always been number one on shrinkcoach.com, helping us, answering questions about the functional movement system, putting out fires, not really fighting back too much fighting back the venom, I should say, really, with some of the people. And then really coming on the Strength Coach podcast and being part of the functional movement system segment, which is no longer on here, but, Brett was a huge part of that, and I'm really excited. By the way, also helped me get through my first RKC and my next two SFGs, because I used his program every time. So, Brett, I know that was a long intro, but I appreciate you coming on, brother.
And it's just great to have a chance to be on, talk to you and your audience. And, I'm getting a little misty-eyed here talking about, the history. And it's been great to have a chance to be involved, to be part of the journey.
I know it's 15 years in, a month. And like I said, you've been part of that. Number one, just as a contributor, never mind functional movement systems, a contributor to strengthcoach.com. And then when I kind of came up with this idea that, we need a special forum for Strength Coach, for functional movement system, because there were so many questions, let's say 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, when people were really just, asking a lot about it. And there was a lot of, and you've been part of that. And obviously always like last minute with me, like, Brett, Lee and Gray don't have anything for this week. Can you help me out? And so we know what it's like to work with those guys. But I want to start out, you have the new book, Iron Cardio, and this really is a product of, I'm calling it, the road back with Iron Cardio. And it's really your road back to a healthy Brett Jones. And I just want you to talk about what happened, why I'm even talking about a road back. What are you coming back from? Tell us the story.
Absolutely. So February 20th of 2020, I was diagnosed with stage 3 primary tonsillar squamous cell carcinoma. And that had been a little bit of a journey in that in late 2019, I had started having really what was ear pain. Initially, a little bit of fluid in the ear. And so my doctor and I thought, okay, it's just kind of a minor ear infection. And we ran a course of treatment, didn't get any better. We ran a stronger course of treatment, didn't get any better. He referred me to an ENT to get checked. Had an initial CAT scan, which was kind of inconclusive because they didn't use contrast and things of that nature. And at this time, not only was I having this kind of eustachian tube / ear pain, my tongue went numb. A vast majority of my tongue went numb. And so I had some pretty interesting things going on. And I came back from a trip to France and on Tuesday, the 18th, I was sitting there with my ENT and he's like, any different? I said, no, tongue's still numb. Things are still about the same. He goes, okay, let's just get in there and do a biopsy. And I've got an opening this Thursday. So Thursday, February 20th, 2020, go into surgery and I wake up. And I knew it was not great news because my wife was there when I woke up and got wheeled from first recovery to second recovery. And so he tells me that I have cancer. And so on March 30th of 2020, I started treatment, 7 weeks of radiation and 2 chemo infusions. And that ended, April 15th or something was my last, May 15th. May 15th was my last day of treatment. And in the course of treatment, I lost over 40 pounds. I was hospitalized 3 different times during the course of treatment. And it was hell. It was, I was on fentanyl pain patches and managing my pain for an additional 8 to 12 weeks after treatment. it was really, really rough, and to lose over 40 pounds. And I was right on the cusp of needing a feeding tube. And when they do the feeding tube, when you're having treatment for throat cancer, it's aligned directly into the stomach through the abdominal wall, which has a lot of complications and infections. And so I was managed to avoid that. And, admittedly, I went into treatment heavy, weighing about 205. But then I finished treatment at about 163. And, just vastly different, and a lot of pain, a lot of, I reached a point where an entire day would be wake up, I had these 500 calorie, no taste shakes that by a company called Kate Farms. And so it would take me an hour and a half to 2 hours to drink about 12 ounces of this fluid, because it was so painful. Yeah.
Oh.
It was, and then I'd sleep for 5 hours, and I'd get up and do it again, and then I'd go to bed. So 2.5, 3 hours of my day was trying to drink a total of 24 ounces of nutrition. And so that's just kind of an idea of just like, it was rough. I had
Brett, wait. So the shakes right now, what month is this now? So May 15th is the last treatment. When are you, like, how quickly did you lose the 40 pounds?
Oh man. Within the first 2 weeks, I probably lost 15 pounds.
Wow.
And then it was just progressive from there, where I'd get on the scale. They had me tracking my weight, and I can probably find that someplace in my notes on my phone. But, I would get on the scale, and, because, the first day of treatment is really getting punched in the mouth, because not only do you start radiation, and radiation's interesting because radiation builds. For the first 3 weeks of the 7 weeks, I would have told you, I don't even know I'm getting radiation. But you start your radiation and you have your first chemo infusion, and chemo sucks. I had a lot of nausea and a lot of problems with the chemo. So my weight loss pretty much started immediately.
Wow. And when you so if anybody doesn't know, I'm talking to a super strong guy. That's what Brett is also known for. Even if you wouldn't know, you think, okay, he's an educator. He's working at FMS, teaching at FMS. And the same thing, obviously, he's the strong first director of education, super strong. So this is now you're at 205. You said that was heavy, but I just want to get a context because, here's a guy who, like all of us in the fitness industry, I always say I had to sell my gym to get in shape. But, but when you say you were heavy 205, so healthy wise, where was that just because you're, I know you're picking up some big weight at times. Where were you at? What was that 205 like?
I had a good bit of abdominal bulge. I was thick around the middle, okay. And I had been, prior to treatment, I was a big fan of sweets. I ate too much. Just to be perfectly honest, I was heavy. Now I was strong. I was training for Sinister. I was doing a lot of sessions with a 48 kilo bell and a 56 kilo bell for 2 and 1 hand swings. And, I was pretty strong and fit, but I was heavy. And actually, thank goodness I was heavy, because had I not been that heavy going into treatment and the amount of weight that I did lose, I would have ended up with that feeding tube into my stomach, probably maybe halfway or 2/3 of the way through treatment. And then that comes with a whole host of problems.
Yeah. So how long now, May 15th was the last day that you had, your last treatment. Okay. So
yep.
Now, what's next in terms of, I know you weren't just okay, cool, I'm going back to kettlebell training because I'm starting to come back now. What happened now?
Well, initially it was pain control and starting to try to regain some weight. The other thing that happens in the process of radiation, and I have greatly decreased salivary gland function. So I have dry mouth, and that influences a variety of things. Within about 2 weeks of treatment, I couldn't taste anything. So I was basically just eating paste for the better part of a couple of years, or several weeks. Sorry for the couple of years there. But that just kind of had to work through just the recovery process and getting back. So it really first. And then, as my wife likes to say, 2020 was the 4 C's for us: cancer, COVID, commencement, and college. Because I'm diagnosed with cancer and start into that. Of course, the pandemic hits with COVID. My stepdaughter graduates high school, so there I am at the end of treatment and trying to be a part of her graduation party, and then she goes to college in the fall. So it was a big year. Regardless of the cancer, there was a lot of things going on, and then of course, cancer treatment just kicked everything else into high gear. So. Yeah. May 15th, finished treatment. I'm on pain meds and fentanyl patch for weeks after, trying to control the pain and recover and gain weight. Became quite a fan of making some shakes and having carte blanche to eat whatever I wanted to just try to put weight back on. And then, I was able to start training again.
When?
And that, what, it's funny you mentioned that, because I decided I would go ahead and look. So
okay.
About a month after the end of treatment, I had started doing some things, kind of tiptoeing my way in, trying some body weight stuff. But then what I realized within a few weeks of training is I have lost so much strength that, and for me, just kind of, it was really, I've rehabbed from various things. I've had 9 different surgeries in my life. Only 2 of those were orthopedic. 3 if you count the back, but the majority of my surgeries have been unrelated to anything training wise and injury wise. And so I've come back from a variety of different things. This was actually my second cancer. I'd had a melanoma, and fortunately that one was just surgical and everything was fine. I didn't need further treatment, and had a pulmonary embolism. And I've had different things happen. I've had to come back to my training a variety of times over the years, but never like this. This was the most significant kind of decline in my function and capabilities. And so when I started training again, doing some body weight stuff, and I'm like, I'm 164. This pull-ups are going to feel great because I'm so much lighter than 205. Well, I was struggling through 2 or 3 pull-ups. And I'm somebody that had, as a kid, I could bang out sets of 20. As a more of a strength athlete, I could at one point do, I've done the beast tamer, so I've done pull-ups with over 100 pounds on me, and I've done sets of 10 with a 32 kilo bell on me. So, I was pretty good at pull-ups, and I'm struggling through like 2 or 3 pull-ups, and really started back with what at that time was called strength aerobics with the 24 kilo bell, and just started experimenting with this, what became the iron cardio protocol. And that's really how I rebuilt my strength. I'm back up right now. I'm about 190. I'm back to a lot of double 32 kilo work, using the 40 kilo in my weight ladders, centering around the 36 kilo. So one of my first sessions back was an iron cardio session with the 24 kilo for 20 sets. And now I can knock out, 60 sets with a 36 kilo, and have really, really rebuilt, and probably in some ways exceeded where I was prior to treatment.
Nice. Now, First of all, just a side note, the other two C's, the commencement and college, let's not downplay those two. For those kids, I had two friends that their kids graduated at that time. They had no prom. They missed the best last 2 months of school that you do nothing. They missed a lot of parties. Then when they went to school, if they went away, it was brutal for them. They some of them went away just to sit in a hotel room by the campus. It was ridiculous. So there's that caused stress in the family too. Your poor wife, because she got it from you, big complaining baby, just because you had cancer.
Exactly.
And then your daughter, But also, before I get into more about strength aerobics, and now let's just say now somebody comes to you and says, Brett, I'm going through the same thing. I want to know in mid-June, when you're starting training, what are some things you might look at, do differently? How would you approach this? Because obviously, this is the Strength Coach Podcast. I want people to understand what they need to think of when they're when somebody comes to them, especially who they've already trained. Like you said, you're a strong guy. You were doing pull-ups like they were nothing, and I've done that too. I lost 10 pounds at one point, and I was like, holy cow! I just added 3 pull-ups without even doing them. It was great. But I understand that. So how would you approach this coaching? How would you start this from the perspective of a coach?
So one slightly different take on it, and then we'll kind of dive down that training rabbit hole, is that and I've made this mistake, and you'll learn a lot as you go through something like cancer and cancer treatment, and not all of it's just the physical part of it. In the past, when somebody would tell me that they were diagnosed with cancer, your knee-jerk reaction is to just go positive and talk about how great they're going to do. And, your sister's brother's cousin's uncle had the same cancer. And of course you're going to do great. And, they're doing great right now. I was not, when I was first diagnosed, I was not in the mental place to hear that. What I wanted, what I needed was just somebody to say, holy crap, that's awful. How are you doing with that? So that kind of knee-jerk reaction of, you're going to be fine. I know people that have had this. I get the desire and the knee-jerk reaction people have to be positive. It's not the right time. At least it wasn't the right time for me. And so,
yeah, it makes sense.
And then coming on as you go through treatment, and you just make it through. You put your head down and you get up and you go to your radiation treatment and you do your thing, and it sucks. I mean, it's awful, but you make it through because you have to. You just what I kept telling myself and what I've told, and one of my good friends, Mike Perry, was diagnosed with colon cancer a year after I had my cancer, and he was a big support when I was going through my cancer treatment. I had no idea I would get to reciprocate the support within a year. But my mantra was identify the next step, take the next step. And if you keep taking steps, it's kind of like a riff on The Martian with Matt Damon, where he's like, hey, you identify the next problem and solve the next problem. If you solve enough problems, you get to come home. Well, identify the next step, take the next step. And if you take enough steps and do what you're supposed to, and the stars align and everything, goes well, you get to come through this. Now, from a training standpoint, during treatment, very, very quickly, I ended up what I could do was go for a walk. I had such issues with treatment that, I'm not this story of this person that was like, I was hitting the gym, 5 days a week and whatnot. No, I was struggling to survive treatment, and I would go on some walks to get out. And there were days where I had to turn around and come back. I couldn't make it through my normal walk. So, in treatment, talk to the doctors, talk to the people that are in charge of this, and get the advice for that particular cancer. For Mike Perry, his treatment was all chemo. Yes, he had a surgery, and then it was all chemo for 6 months. He was getting chemo and treatment every 2 weeks. For me, it was 7 weeks of radiation. And then the chemo was to amplify the radiation. So my main treatment is radiation. And with throat cancer and the way the radiation affects the throat and head and neck cancers, and there's just some details that you're going to need to be aware of there. So if you're starting to train somebody, consult with the doctors. Because of the pandemic, I didn't get to do the physical therapy that I would have done in normal times. But I had a speech pathologist that was helping me with some stretches and, keeping an eye on how I was responding to treatment. So become part of that process, become part of the team if it's in treatment. If it's after treatment, you still have to understand, what that person's been through and kind of where their body is. And that's good communication. It's talking about, everything they went through. And, in hindsight, right before I started treatment, I started working with a client who had just finished treatment, like 9 months or a year before he started working with me. And the emotional response he had to hearing about me having cancer and starting, I didn't understand until after the fact, till I had been through it. And so as you're restarting, I knew what was intuitive to me to get back to training was to get to some body weight work. And this is kind of one of the greats, I've been a part of those discussions where, don't bench press somebody until they can do push-ups. Well, sometimes you're going to get somebody bench pressing and dumbbell bench pressing long before they're doing good push-ups. So you got to know when to adjust the plan. So shortly after I started into some of this body weight work and started kind of loading my body, I'm like, I'm actually not strong enough to be doing this. I need to really, step back. And so start with lighter, less intense than you think you can handle, and allow a lower starting point so you can build a wider base and a higher peak. If you go out too hard, and this is something, actually a drum that I've been beating for a long time. If your one primary question in training is how can I recover from my training, you're doing too much. Like if you program yourself properly and you've got this kind of dialed in, you recover from your training. And so instead of saying, God, this is my training, how can I recover from it? Do less. And then go up from there. So that was kind of a rambling answer with some detours, but from the coaching standpoint and working with somebody that's coming back from cancer and understand where they are, what they've been through, and start lighter, less intense, and with less than you think you need to, and allow that process to because then if you do aim too low, great, you're going to make quick progress. And everything's better. If you shoot too high, you're already compromised in your recovery. And I knew, I just figured at the end of treatment, it would be a year before I really felt like I was back up on top. And I was right.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting from the trainer's perspective or from another person's perspective, because I actually did reach out on like March 1st, because you put a video out. And it's funny, I'm looking at it and I said, I'm thinking of you, whatever, and your family. I know you'll beat this. So like I'm sitting there, hey, I'm one of those positive people. Damn. I was hoping, I said, man, Brett, that sucks. But one thing I did say, and this is another off-topic thing, and that's the problem with you when you and I get on conversation. But I was like, Brett, I know you're watching a million movie reruns, and see what you already did it once. You already quoted or talked about a movie thing in here. It's like it's unbelievable. But you really must have got. I mean, you must be more annoying to hang around now with all your quotes.
I definitely beefed up on a few things, and I did continue to work. When I was going through treatment, and when you look at the ebook and you see the pictures of me in the chemo chair, when I was receiving my infusions, like we were launching the Strong First Training app, and I was writing exercise descriptions to go on the app, and so I would just take my computer and work, and granted there were quite a few days during treatment where I couldn't work because it was just not in a position to even function, much less do something productive. But I continued to work as much as I could through everything, and I think that that's another thing that I needed to keep working to stay focused. I couldn't just stay in the treatment. I needed to be doing some other stuff.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're working like that, that's also, you need a break too, for like that wears you out as well. So then the training piece is, we got to be careful with that. So how long were you doing the body weight and like kind of the light dumbbells before you picked up a kettlebell?
Less than a month. Like I said, I realized pretty quickly that I actually needed to just kind of switch gears, and probably it was within 3 weeks, if I'm remembering correctly from looking at my training log, that I switched from these kind of body weight style workouts to kettlebell style workouts. And one of the first things I did, I tried some swings initially, the classic kind of swings and get-ups, figuring that would be, a good place to reboot from.
Yeah.
But I needed to rebuild my tissues to be able to handle ballistics. I couldn't do a volume of swings to get a training effect because I just couldn't handle the stress on the tissues. I needed to rebuild the tissue quality and the tissue strength, and some good basic strength training was what I thought, the direction I needed to go. And so I started back with this iron cardio, what was at that time known as strength aerobics sort of program. And that was really when things started to turn the corner, and I started to really rebuild some strength and tissue quality.
So what is, for obviously anybody that hasn't read the ebook yet, strength aerobics, what is it?
So strength aerobics was an article and a program or workout suggested by Pavel and Alexei Senard. They wrote this article in 2014. And the original article was basically take a kettlebell that you can press, your 10 RM kettlebell, clean it, press it, squat it, set it down, shake it off, switch hands, rinse and repeat, set a timer for, 15, 20, upwards of 30 minutes, and just kind of go through that sequence, maintaining kind of an aerobic sort of mindset.
But wait, sorry. Is it kind of a little like the escalating density? You're not doing like, a lot of times you're programming on the minute or whatever. This is just like, hey, when you feel good, go back to the other side, or is that how it works?
Yeah, it's meant to be what Pavel started calling when he put out the second edition of Simple and Sinister, he referred to timeless training, and meaning no work rest ratios. You rest until you can pass the talk test, and then you do your next set. And so kind of bringing that mindset into this sort of strength training and it does vary from escalating density training, where it's not an A and a B exercise. It's not multiple reps. It is at most 2 to 3 reps of any given exercise within a total of 3 to 5 reps per set. So it's never that 3 sets of 10 or 15 or, sets of 7 and you're not accumulating multiple sets of 7 or 8. It's a set is clean, press, squat, maybe snatch. And then maybe it's the traveling 2s where you've got 2 cleans, press, squat, and then clean, 2 presses, squat. And so there's a bunch of different variations. And that's, as I started playing with this, and I had done some version of strength aerobics since 2014 when that article came out, because it appealed to me. I like cleaning and pressing and squatting, so it was a pretty easy sell to get me doing that. And when I came back into training, it just made sense to me to get back to building that strength base and not being on the clock, so to speak.
Yeah. But you know what, Brett, can you kind of go into this? And the reason why I want you to talk about this, because I find it interesting. And again, why it wasn't only appealing to you because of the exercises, but what you talk about being intuitive And when you look at a program and you kind of play around with it, not good for everybody to play around with. Sometimes you got to follow a program, but obviously you're a professional, you're a director of education. So being that you have this intuitive personality, this kind of worked for you because there was no set guidelines on work to rest.
Exactly. And I think that actually, what I had recognized when I started doing the timeless style workouts for Simple and Sinister, as I was progressing towards Sinister before treatment, freeing myself from the clock and the work rest ratios was one of the best things that ever happened to my training. We definitely are coming out of this era where high intensity interval training ruled the day for a long period of time. And so, I was just so used to doing things on the clock. And initially, even pre-treatment, freeing myself from the clock just changed my training completely. It was just really better results, better recovery, better, just everything got better. And so coming into this style of training, and I've joked for a long time, and I have it in the book, like Pavel, Fabio, Jeff Newport, like all my friends that are really good programmers and good at programming, not programmers like computer. They don't send me programs for me to use anymore because they know I won't follow them. I'll send them what I did with it. I'll send them an email back and say, hey, that's a good program. Here's what I did with it. And they're like, yeah, that's not the program. I'm like, yeah, but it just made sense to me to do this. And so what I started doing within the what became known as Iron Cardio is I just started experimenting. I just started following that kind of intuitive nature, but within certain guidelines. Like I was not using a set work rest ratio. So if I added a rep and needed more rest, it was no big deal. Like it all fit within this kind of loose structure where I knew as I added variations and I tried different things. And, one of my favorite versions is to add a set of pull-ups. So do a set on the right, set it down, shake it off, set it on the left, set it down, shake it off, do 2 pull-ups. And, that doesn't sound impressive, but if I do, 30 sequences of that, that's 60 pull-ups. That's a pretty good pull-up volume. And it's in the midst of a lot of different kettlebell work. And so I just kind of gave myself permission to try all of these different variations and see what I liked and what the impact was. And so even though I've been doing kind of, quote, the same routine, I love oxymoronics. So it's consistently variable. I do the same thing, but I do a different same thing all the time. I finished a workout here a few weeks ago, and I like to go back and look at the previous time I'd done that session to see what my time was and just kind of do a little comparison. I had to go back a year in my training log to find that same session. So I had done a lot of different variations in between, point A and point B. And that's the kind of thing that's possible. But it's, to me, following that intuitive nature and being self-directed within my training was what has been and is really important.
Brett, let's just, from a coaching perspective now, I love this idea, but like your buddies were saying, as somebody who's programming, you're like, geez, Brett, I want you to do this or that. Are you now looking at identifying a client from that perspective? Like, this person is a little more intuitive. I'll give them a little more autonomy. And do you kind of try to figure out when, this person needs to stay with the program? Are you starting to look at that when you're programming?
100%. 100%. Sorry, I had to cough and sneeze there. And I think that in hindsight, when I look at people that have been successful in training with me, and I look at people that have not continued to train with me, because I'd love to sit here and put some pie in the sky vision of the fact that, everybody I've worked with has ever always stuck with me and always gotten great results. It's not the case. I'm not the right person for a variety of people. And I recognize that. And the people that have really stuck with me over the years, and I have clients that have been with me for a very long time, they're more intuitive. They're okay with me saying, I don't know, what do you feel like doing? Because that's actually how I program myself. I'll sit down with my notebook and go, what do I feel like doing today? So if you're somebody that appreciates that kind of open door where you can step through and go, I want to go this direction today. Now, we course correct, and I work with people to put the guidelines and guardrails in place so that they have a direction, but room to experiment within that direction. The people that have not done well with me over the years, they want to be told, do A, now do B, now do C. And, they want that step by step. They want that solid directions. And I struggle with that because I'm so much of an intuitive in my own training. Now, if you come to me and say, hey, I want to do a powerlifting meet. Okay, I'm going to put together a structured program. We know when you need to peak, which is at the meet. I'm going to count backwards, and we're I'll go through the whole programming process to make sure you're ready for that day. But for me right now, I'm not training for anything. And most of the people I train aren't training for anything. They're not trying to peak for an event. So we have options. We can have variability. And so, but absolutely. I can remember a related story was somebody had given me the Zone diet book. Remember when that came out?
Yeah.
So they had given me the book, and I read it like the first couple chapters, and then it got to the point where we had to actually calculate the points, to calculate the zone. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I just put it on the bookshelf and ignored it. And then I had somebody come in, and they were an accountant, or they did something, in finance and stuff like that. And we were talking about the dietary stuff. And I'm like, I have got the book for you right here. Like, I pulled that off the shelf and handed it to them. They loved going through the process of calculating the points of the zones and, making sure that they were doing everything correctly. Whereas to me, I got to that point in the book and I closed it. Like, I'm not doing that. Nobody puts baby in a corner.
See, everybody?
Crazy for Swayze. But yeah, it's definitely, and I have this in the book as well. And if you think you're intuitive, but you have trouble reaching your goals, you might not be intuitive. You probably need a little more, structure. If you think you're structured and you have trouble reaching your goals, maybe you need a little more intuitiveness in your training to allow for those experimentations and variations. So I think it's a more open way of training. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of, just to relate it to your when I first did the RKC and the SFGs, I just went back to that program. Now, did I do everything, but the other accessory type stuff? No. But you have this whole swing and snatch program that I really followed to the letter per week. And, I pretty much kicked ass on that stuff in my 40s. So I didn't take my first RKC. My first RKC was I was 44. And, and I really didn't have experience snatching. So that program for me, I'm more of an intuitive person normally, but for something like that, I was like, well, I'm sticking to this. And I did some other things just to kind of make sure I can get through stuff mentally, but not from the perspective of how do I do this? So I needed the program specifically to get through and mentally to say, wait a minute, I'm getting this from Brett. Texting him once in a while. He's helped me out with this great, but I have the confidence. I think there's a mental part of it that, you need to have a confidence in that program if you're going to follow it. See, the problem is you don't trust all your buddies and their programs. But, Brett, can you just go over, I think it's a good segue into this idea about waviness for programming and talk to everybody about specifically, because the waviness, I feel like, is just really the specific periodization for an intuitive person.
Yeah, it's as I joke, you can do the same thing every day as long as you don't do the same thing every day. And,
Yeah.
we kind of fall into these traps. We set these minimums for ourselves where I'm never going to press under X weight. And, you get into that with the barbell, right? You go in and you can finally do sets at 225. You got 2 plates on the bar for your bench, and you're like, that's it. I'm not, I'm not going under that, And so we set these minimums that lead us in the direction of losing our variability, losing waviness. And at my first event with Pavel in February of 2002, there was a gentleman there that gave us a quote from a cross-country skiing community that said, only the mediocre are at their best all the time. Everybody else is going to hit peaks, hit valleys, and you can choose to hit peaks and valleys, or you can be forced into hitting peaks and valleys. And that's the typical kind of strength training mindset: is heavier, heavier, heaviest, injury, back off, heavier, 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 heaviest, injury, back off. So you can be forced to step down, or you can schedule it. And for me as an intuitive trainer, it means looking at what I did last time and doing something different. So that, my last session was a weight ladder workout, which I would consider to be a pretty heavy session. So my next session will be a lighter workout with I was using double 32, 36, and 40 kilo for my weight ladder. So my next workout will probably be with a 32 kilo bell, a significant difference in load from double 32, 36, and 40. And so for an intuitive trainer, looking at it and saying, okay, I'm going to do something different, but I need it to be really kind of vastly different. And that's one of the things that gets lost in waviness is if my total volume is 100 reps, well, 90 isn't different. 110 isn't different. And Pavel talks about this in Quick and the Dead, and it's one of the Plan Strong programming principles, where the Delta 20 principle. If you're going to create a change, it needs to be at least 20% different. So dropping below 80 reps would be different from 100. Going to 120 would be different than 100. But operating in these little waves, these small variations isn't really going to get it done. So if I accomplish 50, 60 sets one day, I'm going to do 30 or 40 the next. I'm going to make sure there's a big difference in the number of sets and the total volume. I'm going to make sure there's a big difference in the weight or load that was used. And I can look back at my training and look at times where even I lost my variability. Because one of the tricky things with waviness and being intuitive is you can offset a drop in one area, maybe it's your intensity. And by intensity, I mean the percent 1RM or percent repetition max, not your turned around baseball cap where you're sniffing, smelling salts. So you drop the intensity, but you pick up the density, or you drop the density, but pick up volume. And so there's tricky ways, and I talk about this as far as avoiding the traps in intuitive training. Within the book and an excerpt that was published on Strong First, if it can get tricky because you start manipulating variables and one cancels out the other, and you end up doing a very similar overall intensity, density, volume session, but you thought you created something different. But waviness is key. And having easy sessions is key. If you can't right now off the top of your head go, yeah, that was my last easy session, it's probably time for an easy session to throw in the mix.
Yeah, and I think I'll just tell everybody, I'll probably link this as well. What Brett just went over as well was he talked about the avoiding the traps of intuitive training. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, and it's an excerpt from the book, from Iron Cardio, so you can check that out, and I'll have a link for that. But Brett, let's go. Let's finish up. We got about, probably about 10 minutes. Talk to me about the rest of Iron Cardio and where it goes. So we got this starting point, like you talked about, this idea about strength aerobics and how you kind of started with that, with the, look, hey, we're going to clean, press, squat, put it down, can I talk? Cool. Go to the other side, do it again, right? For, let's say we start at 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but where does this evolve to? Can you just talk about where does iron cardio evolve to?
It's really wherever you want to take it. For me, it's been in the direction of weight ladders and rep ladders and kind of focusing on the press. You can easily put focus towards the squat. Like I said, I've gone from struggling through 20 sets to accomplishing 60 sets. And I do think somewhere between 40 to 60 total sets. And when I say total sets, each side is a set. So when I do my right side, that's the first set. I do my left side, that's a set. And, so getting double bells involved, getting, all of these different things, where do you want to take it? One of the things I talk about in the book and from an overarching concept, the name iron cardio is it's almost like clickbaity. Because I want people trying to figure out what iron cardio is. But the Russians have way more nuanced definitions of what you're trying to accomplish in training. And one of the things that they talk about, and I have this in the book, and it's based off of a couple of Pavel's articles, is this concept of general endurance. And that's probably one of the misinterpretations of something like GPP, general physical preparedness. We tend to think of general GPP as conditioning work. Well, GPP is everything. It's flexibility. It's cardiovascular. It's strength training. It's stretching. It's everything fits into GPP. And we tend to recategorize it as conditioning. When you look at the concept of general endurance, it really fits this model of, and Pavel talks about this in the latest edition of the SFG manual, where, this style of training should almost have like a manual labor feel to it, where it's heavy enough to get your respect. It's something that you can repeat with rest. And if you've ever seen manual labor happening, it's not a sprint. Right? It's somebody doing work over time to get this thing done. Yeah. And there's a certain feel to that. And so, the idea of, can strength training, this sort of strength-based workout, be aerobic or cardiovascular in nature? And I get into that in the book. At first I say I'm not going to get into it. Then I get into it because I figured I'd just save myself emails from people. And there are issues with treating strength training like cardiovascular work. And there's a difference in the heart rate response, the pressure load, the volume load. All of these things are different. And you see this kind of elevated heart rate response that doesn't line up with the, quote, cardiovascular stress because of the contraction of the muscles, restriction of blood flow, and just how everything actually happens. Now, having said that, one of the reasons I think iron cardio succeeds here is it's single reps. I clean, I press, I squat. There's this toggling between a ballistic to an upper body to a lower body, and then sometimes throwing the ballistic in there on the end. And so there's more variation. It's not holding the tension for 10 reps, for 7 reps or 15 reps or whatever the case may be. So there's a very different thing going on in this protocol versus what people would typically consider strength training and looking at the potential cardiovascular impact. And there's research on circuit training and different interval techniques with strength training that do show good aerobic and anaerobic changes and benefits. So there's a bunch of different things that the book gets into and covers these kind of concepts from that general endurance standpoint. Is it actually cardiovascular and things of that nature?
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to getting, like I said, I've only gone through the first 15 or 20 pages and skimmed through the rest for the interview, but I'm excited to, kind of dive, because I haven't used the kettlebells in a while. And this is like, you could do this in your, well, if anybody follows you on social media, you could do it in a little corner, a little dark corner in your house.
Exactly.
Right? I love it. Can you just tell everybody what a strength ladder is before I let you go?
So the weight ladder that I'm doing,
Yeah, I apologize. I said strength ladder. Yeah, the weight ladders.
Yep. So weight ladder is basically going through, if it's not more than 2, you're just alternating weights, right? Which I've done that too. Maybe you do a set with each arm with a 32, you do a set with each arm with a 36 kilo. A weight ladder takes you through kind of light, medium, heavy. So for me, right now, that's double 32, which isn't light, but it's different. So it could be a single 32 kilo bell, followed by a set each arm with a 36 kilo bell, followed by a set each arm with a 40 kilo bell. And by working through that, man, by the time you come back to that lighter weight on your next time through the ladder, it's flying. It feels so much lighter. And then the middle weight starts feeling lighter. And so there's some really neat things that start to happen as you kind of go through that weight ladder. And it's tremendous for building strength and getting exposure to that heavy weight, but not having to handle it for every set. So there's some real good benefits and training adaptations that happen there.
Love it. Brett, well, first of all, really happy that, we're even having this conversation because, you never know, especially with cancer. You've been through a lot. It's just amazing that, to kind of go from, like I said, that road back to, really 2 months later starting body weight, and then a month later, 3 weeks to a month later, starting, putting the kettlebell back in your hand. So just an amazing journey. And I'm really looking forward to diving into iron cardio a little bit more and starting that program. So thanks so much for being on the show again. And I really appreciate you.
Ant, thank you so much. Been such an honor to be part of the journey over the years, and look forward to every opportunity in the future.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 344 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Wow, what a story from Brett Jones. Love that he is back and better than ever. Don't forget, you can track the new strengthcoach.com out for 7 days for free. Totally new format, user-friendly, same great forum as always. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your free trial. Special thanks to Chris Boyer and the folks over at Perform Better. Huge summer sale, 40%. It ends September 30th. Guys, they have a ton of stuff on sale. You got to go check it out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Brett Jones for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength conditioning, performance enhancement, and iron cardio. Thanks to Naamly, helping build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Go to Naamly.com. Use the referral code StrengthCoach to get started on a free 30-day trial. Thanks to Vince Gabriele and KISS Marketing. If you need some help with your marketing, head over to kissmarketing.net to book a free coaching call with Will Matheson. I'll take a look at your current marketing plan and give you some real-time profit-boosting advice. Go to kissmarketing.net to book your free coaching call. Thanks to Nico, Willette, and Perch. Perch is a 3D camera-based weight room technology solution bringing VBT into the 21st century. Head over to perch.fit/strengthcoach to find out more about it. They have some great videos showing how the cameras and how to use it. My name's Anthony Renna. Check out the show notes at continuefit.com. That's going to do it. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.